Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. This is a show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. Uh, got one that's a little bit, it may seem a little bit more abstract than a lot of the things we usually cover, but one of the big concerns parents always have is their child's academic performance. And one of the real concerns that ADHD parents have is, especially if we haven't had a diagnosis yet, is he okay IQ wise? Is he well? Just wanted to hit that topic a little bit. Okay, the first of all, kids with ADHD are no more likely to have IQ problems than any other part of the population. Matter of fact, in my experience, most of the time ADHD kids are a little brighter than average. You know, that I think I've told you before, I am the parent of an ADHD. Well, he's an adult now, but because he was the child of a psychologist, he has been tested. One of the things you have to do in graduate school is you have to find a bunch of people to practice on. And although they tell you not to do relatives, that's the easiest population to get a hold of. So probably all of us have evaluated most of the members of our family, and not not to well, let's just say he was the brightest of the group, not by a bunch, but he was my ADHDer was brighter than average. Uh, and we'll just let it go with that. Otherwise, I'll sound like I'm bragging. But he was a sharp kid and is a sharp adult. We still have better conversations with him than we do with his siblings who are more involved in a little more sophisticated, shall we say, occupations. But so, what is it about ADHD that makes people concerned about IQ? Well, and academic performance for that matter. See, the problem is your IQ doesn't have a whole bunch to do with how well you do in school. Okay? Getting through school is more a measure of persistence than brilliance. Okay? If your IQ is about average, you can go as far as you want to go if you're really devoted to it. Okay? I mean, it's not like that's at least up through the bachelor's level, because most of the time, most of the things you're doing are repetitions of what you've already done before, including largely the first couple of years of college. So it's more that you really want it than that you're particularly gifted or brilliant. And that has a lot of repercussions, I guess. Uh, your child with ADHD has this problem with what we'll call wandering attention. They don't have a really good job. Oh, thank you, whoever that's from. Anyway, that they don't really have interest in a lot of the things that are in school. And you can tell just looking at their report cards. And over the years, I've had, I remember I had this one kid, he was in high school by that time, but his parents brought in every report card he'd had from starting with first grade. And it was really kind of interesting. And I was like, oh my God, you want me to look at all this? But after I did, it was like, wow, that's really amazing. Because there were two things that showed up. One is that the things that he was interested in were the things he did really well in, well above average. And the other thing was that with some teachers, he did really well. And with other teachers, whoa, it was really bad. And then, when I talked to the parents in more detail, it was the teachers who were like drill sergeants that he didn't do well with, and the teachers who probably had an ADHD child of their own, and tended to be a little more supportive and a little less rigid and regimented, that he did well with. Okay, and that's not just that one child that I'm thinking about right now, but all the kids that I have seen a lot of their IQ measure or a lot of their report cards. Sorry, report cards don't have anything to do with IQ. Remember, I'll get in trouble with NEA. It's not even going to be funny. But truth of the matter is, compliance and persistence are more important to getting good grades than brilliance. Matter of fact, brilliant people tend to not do all that well in school because it bores them principally. And certainly if you have an ADHDer, you get him or her bored, and whew, it's hard, getting them to see the importance of, the fifth time they've had basic English or that sort of thing. So anyway, so IQ, like I said, is not so hard and not so important to academic performance. So don't start thinking your kid's a dummy or something because he or she is not getting good grades. That's a whole different issue. The other thing is that the way we measure intelligence, okay? And for some people, they have an IQ, well, they have an evaluation done on their child, and they don't get much of a debrief. Ideally, your friendly neighborhood psychologist will go over the test report in detail and explain things to you. But sometimes, we all get busy and want to just get people out of the room as fast as we can, kind of thing. But the big thing you need to know is, before your brain handles any kind of information, it has to pay attention to it. Okay? That's like the biggie. If you're not paying attention, it did not happen. No, you don't have a memory problem. No, you don't have a learning disability. You just aren't paying attention, why that surprises parents who have an ADHD child, I do not know. But you have to measure or have to hold things with a grain of salt when they're doing an evaluation, because a lot of the things that are included in a full IQ measure, a full intelligence test, are frankly god-awful boring. As a matter of fact, some of it's designed to be boring, to see if, frankly, if they can pay attention. So the thing you have to, you understand is that a lot of times I've seen, children where, they're thinking whether or not they have a learning disability or maybe aren't all that bright. And then, you start treating them, and and usually that includes medication, and you test them again, and all of a sudden their IQs jump 15 or 20 points. Well, guess what? That isn't because a stimulant or whatever medication they're on makes your brain grow or something like some of these shysters would sell you to keep you from having Alzheimer's if you're a little older, a little more on the spectrum towards my age rather than younger people. But the stimulant medication helps people pay attention, helps ADHDers pay attention. That's why they do a lot better, and they are more tolerant of things they're not really interested in. And that explains the difference, why they are scoring much better on an intelligence test than they did, before, when they weren't being, forced to do something they're not very interested in. Okay, I mean, honestly, the good things about intelligence tests are that some of the things they do are kind of interesting. Like if they catch your child's interest at all, he or she'll do pretty well with it. But some of it is not all that interesting, and depending on where they are and what their interests really are, their performance will be way down just because of that, just because it's boring, because it's not interesting. And they have troubles with that. They have troubles paying attention to things they're not really interested in. So I'll probably go on this in a little more detail later on. I can present. I've been thinking about doing this, but I'm having trouble figuring out exactly how to present it, since I don't usually use a two-camera setup or anything doing these things. And it would be helpful to have a whiteboard, or some kind of chart anyway that I could show. Uh, I'll have to look in some of my old presentations. I may have a sort of a model of the way, it's a pretty gross general model of how the brain works, how the brain processes information. And that would probably be helpful to a lot of y'all. Anyway, so that's it. If your child's not doing well, performing well in school, performing well on intelligence tests, it's likely more a matter of lack of interest, which causes, for ADHDers, causes lack of performance, because the information just never gets past that old attention block in the brain. Okay, I hope that's been helpful for you, and we will catch you next week. Anyway, and I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras, and this has been Dr. G's ADHD Room, I guess we're calling it. And we will catch you next time. And remember, we're the show that tries to make the world safe for ADHDers, because we need outside the box thinkers, people who aren't neurotypical, which is your child. They're the folks who look at the world's big problems and figure out ways to solve them. Neurotypical folks are really good at keeping the world exactly the same way it is. But to make progress in big areas, especially, we need people who think outside the box. And that's your child. So take care of him or her and treat them well. Okay, we'll catch you next time.